Hello, folks. Welcome to the Redeemed Marriage Podcast. This is Rusty and Heather Bryant, and we do not do a little jingle at the beginning anymore that tells you what this podcast is all about. But if we had to describe it, we would say that this podcast is to encourage healthy marriages, strengthen wounded marriages, and begin the process of restoration to broken marriages. So, I felt like every now and then we should probably throw that out there because we just kind of skip it and we're like, y'all figure it out. When you start listening,
Glad you're here.
when you start listening to what we have to say, you'll be like, oh, that's what this is about. But we are here just to talk about marriage and all things marriage, and it all sort of is with the backdrop of our story of infidelity from over 13 years ago. So today we're going to continue talking about, we're just throwing a word. Mm-hmm. It's not necessarily a series. These words have been coming up to us, and they're words that we think that all marriages experience at some point or another in their marriage. And so the word that we're going to address today is the word control.
Yeah. And when we first started thinking about this word, I was like, does everybody feel that in their marriage? But I think one way or the other, you have either felt maybe you're trying to control your spouse too much, or your spouse needs controlling because they're not doing what you want them to do. So you feel like that's your job, or you feel like your spouse is trying to control you. And so I feel like that everybody can relate to one of those things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and for those of you that are listening that have had some sort of betrayal in your past, in your marriage, we're going to get there too, like how betrayal affects this feeling and this need potentially for control, and how that's supposed to ebb and flow and change throughout the healing process. And so we want you to kind of, because we are going to use our story to talk through some of that. But I thought what we would do first is more like what you said when you were just talking about how every marriage probably feels at some point, you're being too controlling, or, that's a big part of it. But also, like what you said, I feel like I need to control you.
I mean, like, you can hear, I've heard people say, I feel like I'm treating him like a toddler, but he's acting like one, And so, like, I just feel like I have to step in and put boundaries and control what his choices are and things like that, because he's not acting mature enough to do it himself.
Yeah. Okay, so...
And I say him, but that could be her as well.
Well, okay, I've thought a lot. We talk about how a lot of times our podcast ideas, they come from... Sometimes I'll say, hey, I've got a great idea, let's talk about this. But a lot of times you say, hey, here's a topic, but, we joke about it being like this forest, and then you ask me to put the trees in there. And so part of that is that I get the opportunity to just really put you on the spot and ask you questions.
Oh, yay.
Because you've given me the responsibility of coming up with the structure.
Right.
And so, but just like what you say, sometimes we make life fun for each other because we're so very different in that area. And I think that people, there's different listeners. There's a listener out there that just loves to hear us just talk, and they can follow along with anything. But then there's others that are like, hey, give me something I can walk away from here and I can go, oh, y'all talked about A, B, and C, and this is how I can apply A, B, and C to my marriage.
Well, and I think that's why this works for us, and it works for our listeners, because I really don't have a lot of like guidance or direction in where I'm going with topics, because I just have random thoughts. But you are very, very structured, and you need point A, B, C. And so I think that we kind of get both sets of listeners when we talk about a topic. And this is a perfect example of that, because I have this big arching thing that I feel a lot, that we've walked through this type of situation before. And then B, I feel like a lot of the people we coach and do marriage counseling for or marriage coaching for, this is a topic that comes up a lot. And then when I just talk with friends and regular people that we're not necessarily doing marriage coaching with, it's a topic that comes up a lot. And so there's got to be some guidance around the topic of control, whether you're the spouse that is like, I'm doing the controlling, or if you're the spouse that feels controlled by your spouse.
Yeah, and I think that there's this bigger way of approaching this and just talking about control in general in marriage, but then to go deeper into the betrayal part and how that change, and should that change the balance of control? How does that change balance of control? And so I want to make sure that we talk about that, because so many people listen to our podcast, and that's why they listen, is because they're coming from that. But before we go there, I would love for you to sort of give your overall idea and opinion of what a healthy marriage, the balance of control, like what is that supposed to look like? And I'm going to, since I've asked you that question, now I'm going to be fair to you and give you a chance to think for a minute. Because when I started thinking about control, I knew we were kind of going to go based off of the betrayal thing so that people can hear that side of it. But I also started thinking about how so many marriages are in a really unhealthy place of either one spouse or the other is in control, and the balance of power, so to speak, is really out of whack. And I think that a lot of that comes from this. We've all heard the phrase, "Oh, she wears the pants in that family," or "he wears the pants in that family." And I think that what happens there is that's usually when that phrase is used, it's used in talking about the wife.
Yeah.
Like you would say, "Oh, she definitely wears the pants in that family," and that's somebody saying, "Oh, she controls everything in that family." Now, then,
which I think gives that saying comes up for women, because I think people expect that the man is in control. So when that's flipped, then it's an obvious, oh, she's wearing the pants.
Exactly. Now, there's also this very dangerous, which I think there's a lot of marriages out there. There's this other dangerous shift in the balance where the man feels like, I'm the man of the house and I control everything.
Yep.
I am in power trip, I'm in control of everything.
And you have to submit to the nth degree.
That's right. And they take advantage of it, and they use that and this is not, we don't have to talk about submission and things like that. That's not necessarily what this particular podcast is about. But I think that some people even take advantage of that.
Yeah.
And they use that biblical, the wife is supposed to submit to the husband, and it becomes this dominating power struggle. Okay, so in light of that, what do you talk about a healthy marriage and what you feel like a healthy balance is supposed to be in the area of control?
Well, we say often that we have our story and that's what we know. And so it's easy for me to look at kind of what we walked through. And we don't have to get into the infidelity part right now, but I just know pre-infidelity, I was very controlling of you. It wouldn't surprise me if people said she wears the pants in that family. And which I'm not proud of at all. But I did. I was very controlling. I expected certain things. I made you feel bad if you didn't walk us, not walk like
the way I strut.
Yeah, not that, not that. But like if you didn't
the
go
way
a
I
certain
get my
path,
groove on.
no, like there were just expectations that I had of you. I was a very fierce and very strong. That's the word I was looking for, woman. And I thought that's great. I need to be, and I think that got us into trouble for sure. It wasn't healthy. I think if you're listening and you're like, I'm a strong woman, I'm a fierce woman, I'm like that's kind of my personality. And our listeners can't see me do air quotes, but that's my personality. That if it's something that is making your husband feel less than, then it's not a good characteristic. If it makes your husband feel, I don't know another word besides less than, not like he's an important figure in your life, then, I mean, that's not a good place to be in. So I think that's a big one is I just felt like I was way too, controlling before infidelity. Then as we tried to get a good picture and a better picture and a godly picture of what marriage should look like, when we did walk through infidelity, you had to have a little bit of control there. Are you going to interrupt me?
Yeah. Can we back up just for a second and let's kind of finish up that point, I guess, that you were making about the, she wears the pants in the family kind of a thing. And here's what happens a lot of times in marriages that are like that. The husband, not only do they lose their voice a lot of times, but they lose their ability to effectively lead the family.
Right.
Because it just becomes, I'm just going to relinquish all of the control to you. And so, I mean, Heather's right. Like I wasn't a weak person. Like I have a strong personality and I have very strong and deep-rooted beliefs and convictions and all of that kind of stuff. But even that can be squelched by somebody with, a wife with a strong personality. Now, we have talked about this multiple times. There's nothing wrong with a strong woman and a strong personality. But I will also say if you're one of those wives that's listening to this and you kind of feel like, man, people might look at us and say I wear the pants in the family, it's very dangerous. And it's not an attractive thing. It's a really and from people on the outside looking in, it's scary. And it's like, man, that marriage is in trouble because that balance is out of whack. Now, I think you explained all that perfectly because you can explain it well because that's who you were. Okay, now there's this flip side of unhealthiness where a husband is just like, I'm the man. I make all of the decisions. Everything I say goes, you submit to me. If you are that person, if you are that man, I am just telling you, you're getting it completely wrong. That is not your role as a husband. Now, so I want husbands to listen and go, oh, is that me? I want wives to listen and say, oh, is that me? And if you feel that way, then we got to balance this control and balance this power out some. All right, now here's where I want you to kind of answer that a little bit better. There's a ton of wives out there, I think, that are listening and going, well, I have to control things because my husband is not worth me submitting to. He is not the kind of person that deserves me to follow his lead. What do we do with those people?
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a hard one. And we have walked with people who are like that. And, if your husband is not the spiritual leader of your family, then you don't just go, oh, we don't have a spiritual leader. Like you have to kind of take that over. But it doesn't have to be, and not just in that area, but any area. It doesn't have to be loud and proud. It can be a very gentle thing. Like, oh, well, if you're not going to do it, then I guess I will type of attitude is not it. It's, just leading well. If your husband is not the type of person that your family should follow, then it's leading well, but doing it in a non-powerful, non-look at me, non-aggressive, but just being a gentle shepherd in that area. And I'm getting that from like the Proverbs 31 lady woman that God talks about that we should be. And so it's very clear that that's how we're supposed to walk. And so, but I do feel for the lady that is like, my husband's he's not somebody that I want my children to follow, and get direction from. He's not the one I want speaking over my children and over our family. And that's a tough place to be, but you can do that without being controlling of him.
Yep.
It is, I'm going to take this area that I have to lead because you're not, but I'm not going to try to control you into being who I want you to be, because that's not going to happen. Like, you trying to make your husband be the person that God created him to be is not a battle you're going to win. God can only do that.
Yep.
And so it's releasing that to, okay, God, I trust you with him, and I want you to break his heart and make him a leader. But I know no amount of nagging, no amount of shaming, no amount of pointing to what I wish he would be is going to turn him into that. And so I'm going to keep praying for him to be the godly man that you have created him to be. But in the meantime, I can't let my family suffer. So I'm going to be the gentle spirit that comes in and leads my children.
Yeah. And I think that we kind of are directing our attention that way because that's the balance that we see that more, where it's the husband that doesn't lead in the way that he's supposed to lead. Now, that's not the case all the time.
Sure.
There's a lot of cases where the husband is doing their best to lead and to lead the family, and the wife is just completely not on board. And so in that case, then the husband sort of has to step in and be the person that, I mean, you're supposed to be the leader anyway, but even then it's not, well, you don't get to make any decisions because I'm the leader anyway. I'm the head of this house, and because of the way that you live your life, you don't deserve a say in this anyway.
Right.
So there's that also where the husband still has to balance. Okay, well, if I'm leading well, I need to lead my wife along with me well.
Right.
So that's all of that is hard enough. But you were fixing to jump into, so let's go there. When something happens with betrayal, then all of a sudden there's this shift in this control, balance of power, however you want to say it. And so we're going to just talk for a minute about, is that something that's necessary? How long does it last? That type of thing. And we just have to jump in and say, all we can tell you is our story. And so we're going to shift right now into more of a really personal look at how this played out in our story. And when we can look back on it 13 years later, we can look and go, oh my goodness, we got it right. I don't know, for us, I don't know how we got it right other than by the grace of God and him leading us. And so I want people to go, all right, well, we don't really know how to do it because nobody does. So maybe we should try the way that they handled it.
Right. And, I also would like to say that when you touched on this, is it's not the same for everybody. And there also is so many elements that could change
That's right.
this story. Like if our, if like I think about people who their spouses struggle with pornography, because that is a very big one that we walked with lots of people with and or through, and that might look different than an affair, or infidelity. And so there's lots of ways that trust is broken, and putting boundaries and healthy boundaries in place and guardrails and hedges and all of that to help control what happens in your marriage might look different for everybody. But before you go, well, then why are we listening to this? Is I think there are some principles and truths that no matter what you've walked through that has brought you to this point of betrayal and after betrayal and trying to rebuild your marriage, there's some truths that apply to all of it.
Yeah, definitely. When I think about what happened to us 13 years ago and you coming to me and confessing that you had been unfaithful, my need for control stemmed from the fact of me looking back over a period of time and going, I didn't know it, but our marriage was completely out of control. I had obviously no control because I didn't even know what was going on. And so then all of a sudden inside it becomes, I got to get control of this. I have to get control of my marriage. I have to get control of you. Like that's a real, like that's the root of it. And so where it stems from, so for those of you who are out there, whether it's the husband or the wife, where you're feeling like, okay, I betrayed my spouse, but they are trying to control me. That's where it comes from. And so you need to hear that it's not always about, I'm going to treat you like a child and I'm going to babysit you. It's just this natural, I obviously was not in control and this is what happened. And so now let me take control and see if I can keep it from happening again. Because that's the ultimate goal and the dream, is that this never happens again. And so the only way we know how to make that happen, at least at the beginning, is to get control. So,
and I can remember you saying that your whole world felt like it was spinning out of control.
Absolutely.
Not just our marriage, like your whole world, like job, all from a confession that I made. And then all of a sudden, everything felt, even the things that really weren't out of control, felt out of control just because of what I did. And so you were grasping at everything to try to just regain control of anything that made you feel like your world could quit spinning. And I can remember, like, you would even with the boys, you were like, no, they're going to be with me because that was like, you could protect them and you felt in control when they were with you. And so, like, if you're listening to this and you feel like, my spouse is driving me nuts because I betrayed them, or they found out that I maybe, was looking at pornography or whatever, and that I guess it's the trust issue. My spouse isn't trusting me right now, and because they don't trust me, they're trying to control every angle and every ounce of what I'm doing. That is why, because they are just trying to get back in control of the tornado. And so give them a little grace in that, especially at the beginning.
Well, I think that if you were sitting here and whoever the listener is somebody that was in your shoes, I think that you would tell them what we were told and what you were told really early on by some friends of ours. And that became one of the greatest sources of comfort for me, because I needed to feel like I had some control. I needed to feel like I was the one that was given permission to kind of make all of the decisions during this healing process. And there was a friend of ours that had battled pornography. It wasn't infidelity, but the husband who had battled pornography, I remember us going over to their house to talk to them about it and just get some help and some guidance on how they went through it. And I remember him looking at you and saying, you have given up your rights and you need to be okay with that for a time. And I think that you would say that to people.
100%. And if that makes you prickle, if that makes you like, oh, heck no, then you're not in a place of brokenness.
That's good.
Because I would have done anything.
That's right.
I was like, okay, yes. And there were some things that I immediately did because my phone was a source of communication with the other person. I easily was like, it's yours. You can have it. So I gave that up. I was like, take my phone. That way, I'm not contacting them. I wanted to be with somebody trustworthy so that you knew that I wasn't going and, meeting up or whatever. And so I was either with my mentor or my family because I could be. We walk with people that they're like, well, I got to go back to work.
Right.
I mean, I'm not saying any of that. I'm just saying I was very purposeful because you asked me to be, and I was willing to be with somebody else, to give up my phone, to do these things that it's like, I will do whatever you need me to do. Now, did that last forever? No. But for a very short time at the beginning, I was like, whatever you want me to do. And those are the things you asked me to do. And it was easy because I was like, whatever you want. Like I said, if you balk at that, then you're not broken. Or you're trying to still have control of, but I might want to reach out to them if I get sad. Or I might, and that's not okay.
Yeah.
You have to let those things go.
Yeah. And I think that's a great perspective from you and your side of things. So you're speaking to whether it's a husband or a wife that has done the betraying, that there becomes this period of time where there has to be this shift in the balance of control or power, or whatever you want to call it. Now there's a correct way to handle that from the other person's perspective, and then there's also some really, really unhealthy ways of handling it. And so you can speak into some of how I handled that, but I love the story that you told me today when we were talking about this and how this kind of came up for you and the story of someone that's drowning.
Yeah. So I heard that this week. My friend and I were talking, and actually her counselor used it as an example for her of something she was going through. And she said that when you are actually taking lifeguard classes and talk about how to save someone's life who's drowning, that the thing that they tell you is most important is if the person is flailing, like if they're out there swinging their arms and screaming and kicking their feet and acting like a crazy person, you cannot go out there and save them because they aren't ready to be saved. They're acting like a crazy person and they're scared. And, obviously there's fear there, and they're just acting irrationally, trying to stay above water. But it's when they give up, it's when they know they can't do it, and they quit kicking and screaming, and it's when they go under. That's when you immediately go in and try, and rescue them, because they aren't fighting you anymore. I mean, this is not new news to anybody.
Right.
You know that if you try to, you've heard that if you try to find, save somebody who's drowning, they're going to pull you under. But instead, you wait until they surrender a little bit, and then you go in and save them. And the point of that is that you cannot save someone who is not willing and ready to be saved. If they're flailing and being crazy, then that's not the time to step in.
Well, the whole picture there is when somebody is drowning, then they're out of control.
Right.
But the flailing and the fighting it is them trying to regain control. Right. And it's a helpless situation that they're just fighting against. Really, they're fighting themselves. And like you said, when they finally let it go, and I really think that for me, that was a big part of our story, in that I never there was this early on, this just kind of, I'm in control now, and it gave me some strength, and it gave me some peace and assurance of I get to be the one making decisions. And for us, that was so important because it was a real shift in balance.
Because I had
you
been
had
the-
been because you had been that person for so long, and so all of a sudden it became okay. Well, now you got to follow my lead, and I remained in control like that for a time, but it became pretty exhausting because I felt like I was trying to control you just so you wouldn't do it again.
Right.
And that's exhausting because then you at some point feel like you're just a babysitter and you're treating, I'm treating you like a toddler, and that is no fun.
It is.
It is a miserable marriage. It's a miserable existence. And
It's not fun for you.
Nope.
And it's not fun for the other person.
That's right.
Like, it's not just, oh, I'm tired of treating them like a toddler. I mean, nobody wants to be treated like a toddler.
Exactly.
And so, like, I can remember so vividly you controlling, because that made you feel like, okay, you're not doing this to me again. And so it was very, you were, you're going to do this, you're going to do this. You drew a line in the sand and were like, hey, if this happens again, I'm gone. Like, and that had to be said.
Yep.
Because if not, it may have kept happening and happening and happening. But here is where I think you changed. You let go of that control when my heart changed. And when you knew that my heart changed and that I was trying to become trustworthy again, that I was trying to show you, that I had changed. I was, pursuing the Lord with everything I had. I was doing everything that I could. We often say it wasn't your job to trust me again. It was my job to become trustworthy.
That's right.
And that's what I was trying to become. And when you saw that, you really let go and let me become that person. And I just have to say, I can't imagine how scary that was for you to relinquish control like that. Because we walk with people that I say to them, you're holding on too tight. Like, you are trying to control your spouse in a way that is unhealthy, and you're going to end up pushing them away. Because if you had continued to try to micromanage me and, well, you can't do this and you can't do that, and I don't like it when you do that, then it's just a huge turnoff. And it's like, I can't win. Like, I'm doing everything I can to become trustworthy again, and it's never going to be good enough for you. And that is a way to turn somebody completely off, is by trying to control them in a way that is unhealthy. But in the same way, what if I had not become the person that was trustworthy? I mean, that's real, I mean, by the grace of God. Sorry, I'm sweating. I start preaching. But by the grace of God, He changed my heart. And I'll never get over that, ever. Will I get over the fact that He broke my heart and allowed me to see who I was without Him. And so because of that, I started chasing after Him because I was in love with Him, and not because you were telling me what to do. And that's the thing. Like, if you are micromanaging your spouse to the point where you're like, well, you're not going to do this, 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 and this, and this until I see this, 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 and this, it's never going to happen, because you cannot make your spouse do those things. It has to come from the heart. And you're probably keeping your spouse from being able to pursue those things on their own because you're controlling too much. And I know, like, I can't imagine how scary it was for you to let go of that control again. And it's really like saying, okay, God, I trust you with her. There's another thing that I remember my mentor saying, I hope this is not off topic, but I remember you saying to my mentor, and I'm sure we've shared this on the podcast before, but I remember you saying to Penny, Penny, how do I know she's never going to do this again? And she squeezed your little cute little cheeks and said, you don't. Like, you don't. That is what, like, there is no way that you can control your spouse enough that you can guarantee it's never going to happen again. And so you have to relinquish control of that and say, God, I trust you with them. I trust you with them. I can't control them, but you are in control of all things. And so I know you're in control of them, and I'm going to relinquish that to you.
The cool thing about when we get going in these podcasts is how we don't talk about the points that we're going to make, but we make each other's points. And the whole time that you were talking about your heart and how it changed, I was going to jump in and say, yes, that was your role in it. And then my role happened when Penny said, like, that was going to be my point, was that Penny said, when I said, how do I know she's not going to do it again? And Penny said, you can't know that.
Yeah.
And that was my invitation to just release that, and to almost like that, like someone that's drowning, to just be able to go, okay, like, I can't do it. And I can't control this situation any more than I am. And so I've got to let it go. And when we got to that point in a healthy way, which was, I mean, it was probably months of battling this, but when we got to that point, everything shifted into this very godly and healthy place of control and balance, where I was strong enough and healthy enough to take this place that I believe that God places a godly man in leadership role, and you in a place where you could, with submission, not because it's because of what I did that I have to submit to you. It is, my heart is where it is now, and it's in a place where we're a team together, but you deserve the respect of being a godly leader. And so I'll follow that. But for me, I will never, every decision, like we do everything together. And it's because we completely trust each other and our roles. Here's the thing, people that if you know us and know us well, you know that Heather is still very strong. She's still a very fierce woman, and you probably noticed that when she started preaching to y'all just a second ago. But
it's passion.
But the beauty of that is, yes, it is. It is now. It's passion, but you do it in such a gentle way where I'm never threatened. And I never feel like I have to pull the card back out of, do you remember what you did? Because I'm in control now. That never happened. We never go round and round in that circle ever. And I just believe that it's because of the healthy way that we handled this shift in power balance, and how we gave it the right amount of time and the right amount of space. And then there was this relinquishing of it to where it was like, I can't do this. And so for those of you that are out there holding on to this power, at some point you have to let that part of it go so that you can walk in freedom with your spouse, especially if they are being trustworthy.
Absolutely.
And so that's our encouragement to you. Like, and here's the other part of that. We have found it hard to help you if you're flailing around like that. Our marriage coaching can't be done when you're being controlling and dominant and not letting your spouse grow in freedom.
Right. Well, and that's where that picture of the rescue comes in. Like,
yep. That's
like
right. We can't help rescue you.
Right. And that's, and that's not just people we coach. We're talking about the people that you listen to our voice every week, and we're trying to help you in your marriage. And if you're thinking, well, it's just not working, well, are you trying to have too much control?
Yeah.
And so we're not It's not just the people that
That's
we're
right.
coaching. It's if you're listening,
Yeah.
if you're watching,
Yeah.
then that is something that you need to evaluate
Yeah.
in your life.
Well, I feel like this is something that we could probably continue dissecting much deeper, but I do feel like, we went a little longer today because there's so much that,
Sorry.
there's so much to it and so much that I feel like we needed to share. And there's people out there that need to hear this, and they need to hear how it was successfully and done in a healthy way by a couple that we walked through this exact thing. And so I hope that our story gives you some hope. I hope that it gives you some principles and some truth that, hey, we need to try it that way.
Because it's not like we went from a healthy balance to infidelity and then back to a healthy balance. Like we had it completely wrong,
Yeah.
then went through infidelity, and then we're able to get it into
That's right.
the right. And in a God-honoring position where it's a balance of submissive and being gentle and just walking hand in hand instead of this constant power struggle.
And I think an incredible testimony to you is that I don't think that anybody that looks at us and our marriage right now, no one would say, "Oh, she wears the pants in that family."
I hope not.
And that's who you were the first 15 years of our marriage. And so, but that is so much more God honoring, so much more attractive to me. And, and all of it goes back to God changing both of our hearts through that, because you obviously could have been stuck where you were, and I could have stayed stuck in this place of I'm in charge now.
Yeah.
I'm like, you have no rights ever
Absolutely.
again because of what you did.
That's right.
And now, we say it all the time, but I trust you more than anybody else in the world. And a lot of that is allowing you the freedom to grow into who you are supposed to be. And I'm walking alongside you in that.
If you tried to micromanage me all of the time, I wouldn't have grown. Like I would not have been able to become who God wanted me to be, because I would have become who you wanted me to be.
That's good.
But you just let me be who God wanted me to be. And you were able to say, God, I trust you with her. Whether that's what I desire for her to become or not, I trust you with her, and I'm going to let you have her.
Yeah.
And because you were able to do that, because I don't think past the first week, maybe two, I don't think I've ever heard you utter the words, "Do you remember what you did to me?" Ever. Because it's not something you hang over my head. It is just something that you allowed God to shape me with. And me being able to say, God, I want to be a new creation, and I want that new creation to be what you desire. And you allowed that, and then you fell in love with who God created me to be this time.
And this is a topic for another day, but when you say that, I think that there's some people out there that wonder, did I not hold that over you because I felt less than, or, I get asked that. I get asked that a lot, like how that made me feel, like I wasn't good enough. And, by me not holding that over you, I think it's the exact opposite. Like instead of it being that I felt, I can't think of it, but you keep saying less than, so it's just stuck there in my head. But weak,
yeah,
like weak, and I'm not good enough, and like no self-worth or self-value. And for whatever reason, when I was able to get to a point where I was not going to hold that, like that made me stronger.
Absolutely.
And it made me more like Jesus and the hands and feet of Jesus. And so I don't know. I don't know why I never really struggled with that much after those first few weeks, because I became really confident in who I was in Christ, who God made me, and how He created me to journey with you.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I mean, that's like warrior mentality
and
for
not
me.
only that, but you have said so many times, like, you knew that God created you. Like, one of your highest honors was going to be to walk with me through this. Like, that's not weak.
Yeah.
And, I've actually had a conversation with someone who was trying to get into marriage coaching, and they couldn't get their spouse to come because he was embarrassed. She had an affair. He was embarrassed and said, I can't get on there with them because I look like a weak man. And I just wanted to say, that's what the enemy wants you to believe. Like, that's what the enemy wants you to think, is that you're weak and because you're staying. And that's not weakness. That is the ultimate, like, you're fighting for your marriage.
Right.
The weak thing to do
to
would
walk
be
away.
to walk away, to be like, you know what, I'm done. That's weak. But to stay and fight and be strong for your family and for your wife and saying, no, we're not going down that easy. The enemy will not win. Like, I am battling for this marriage. That's strong.
And I think weakness is also staying in control.
Yeah.
Like, not letting go of the control. Like, I don't know, people out there are thinking, oh yeah, you're strong, you're in control now because of what they did. And what's showing strength is, no, I'm giving this to God.
Absolutely.
I'm letting you become the person that God has designed you to be. And it all goes back to that God is after your spouse's heart. And if you are called to be a part of that, what a beautiful thing. And what a strong thing that you're standing there fighting. That's
right.
the warrior mentality. I'm
right.
fighting for my family. I'm fighting for my spouse.
That's right. And that it's not a picture of control.
Nope.
It's a picture of fighting for your marriage and letting God fight with you and to battle with you, and trust Him. Trust Him with your spouse.
Yep. I actually love these episodes where we don't even really look at the time, but I know we've gone so far over and I don't even care.
Okay, good.
So
maybe we should chop it into 2.
No, this is good stuff.
Okay.
So hey, I hope you
Don't
enjoyed.
be mad.
Yeah, don't be mad. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys next time on the Redeemed Marriage Podcast.
Peace.